Hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan Divitt, the president of the UT Objectivism Society. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. The UT Objectivism Society is the student organization that is the main source on campus for information about Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. And over the course of each semester, we meet weekly to discuss our ideas. If you find the ideas you hear tonight interesting, I invite you to sign our email list in the back of the room when you leave. And we'll send out information about our meeting times next semester. First, I'd like to ask everyone to silence their cell phones or any other electronic devices so that we don't interrupt Dr. Brook speaking tonight. Second, I would like to give thanks to Dr. Brook for being here with us today. We know he has a very busy schedule, and we appreciate that he's taken the time to be here with us. So thank you, Dr. Brook. Also, I would like to thank the MPA Council, and particularly Jonathan Graybird, for sponsoring this event with us and to helping make sure that it's possible that we got this room. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to be in the Macomb School of Business. So thank you, Jonathan, and the rest of the MPA Council. Dr. Yaron Brook is the executive director of the Ayn Rand Institute. He is a columnist at Forbes.com, and his articles have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Investors Business Daily, and many other publications. He is a frequent guest on national radio and television programs and is a co-author of Neoconservatism, an Obituary for an Idea, and a contributing author to Winning the Unwinnable War, America's Self-Crippled Response to Islamic Totalitarianism. Dr. Brook is co-author with ARI fellow Don Watkins of the national bestseller Free Market Revolution, How Ayn Rand's Ideas Can End Big Government. A former finance professor, he got his PhD actually from Macomb School of Business. He speaks internationally on such topics as the causes of the financial crisis and morality of capitalism, ending the growth of state, and U.S. foreign policy. And thus, without further ado, welcome Dr. Yaron Brook.
Thank you to the Objective Club and to the MPA Council for inviting me. And thank you all for being here. Thank you. Yeah, it is a little bit of, it's kind of cool. It's about 20 years since I graduated. It's just as young as I was back then, if you believe that. So, Shrugging the Stigma of Success. This is a title I didn't come up with, and we'll have to figure out if I actually deliver on the title. You'll have to tell me at the end, but we're gonna talk about success, particularly in the context. What I want to talk about is success in the context of business. We're in a business school. Many of you, hopefully, are business students, or some of you are business students. And yet, there is this issue that I think we face within the society we live in. If you're an athlete, and you sign a $100 million contract, whether you live up to that contract or don't live up to that contract, everybody's going to cheer you when you sign the contract. And if you don't live up to it, everybody's going to shrug and say, well, they made a bad deal. Who cares? Tough. But it's never a big deal. It never gets moral passions engaged. I'm a Red Sox fan, and the Red Sox signed this Japanese pitcher once, right? And they paid $50 million to the Japanese club, and they paid him $50 million. And they thought he was going to be a superstar. Right? And he was okay, but he wasn't worth $100 million. There was no press about this. I mean, the sports writers wrote a little bit. But think what happens when a CEO gets paid $100 million. Particularly if it turns out after the fact that he didn't perform, that he wasn't that good. I mean, the world's ended. Everybody's in uproar. Everybody is shocked. And how could this be? And it's not their money, right? Any more than it's their money when a pitcher gets paid $100 million. Yet society somehow finds this offensive. Generally, we have a special attitude in our culture towards business and businessmen. And it goes something like this. We kind of admire them, we respect them, and we resent them and hate them at the same time. So take somebody like Bill Gates. I mean, everybody wants to be Bill Gates. Everybody admired what Bill Gates did when he did it. And yet, many people were kind of happy when the Justice Department went after him. They resent the amount of wealth that he had and has. When he was running Microsoft, what was people's general attitude towards Bill Gates? Positive, negative? I mean, again, positive in the sense that he succeeded in business, but as a human being, as a man, right? As a moral creature. In terms of morality, in moral terms, what did we think of Bill Gates? Positive, negative? I mean, put him on a scale, I don't know, who would you consider, like a culture considers a moral hero? Somebody who's noble and just and good and virtuous.
Mother Teresa.
Perfect. If you hadn't said it, I would. So here's Mother Teresa. Where's Bill Gates? I mean, in terms of our moral thinking, in terms of the language that we think about, Bill Gates is way down here, right? If we think about him in moral terms at all, it's at best morally neutral, because we don't think in terms of business as moral or immoral. And worse, it's negative, because he's got $70 billion. How can that be right? Right? There are a lot of people who don't have anything. So, from the perspective of morality, we view him as negative. And yet, who do you think who did more to help other people? Bill Gates or Mother Teresa? Who impacted more lives? Positively impacted more lives. I mean, it's not even close. Who hasn't been, now you guys, a lot of you are too young to remember when Microsoft dominated the world, right? But who on the planet has not been impacted by Microsoft in one way or another, directly or indirectly? I'm not even talking about the wealth that was created, the jobs that were created, and not just jobs at Microsoft, jobs at all the suppliers, all the companies that use Microsoft products, all the people. I mean, it's endless number. But then, all of us use Microsoft products. It's changed our lives. And millions and billions of people use Microsoft products. So here's a businessman who's impacted every human being on the planet, but gets zero moral credit for it, or indeed, in many cases, negative moral credit. Right? He's perceived negative. And here's a woman, you know, she helped some people, she prevented some people from dying of starvation in India.
Well, she didn't really.
No, she did. She just didn't do anything to help them rise up above their poverty, but she didn't prevent them from dying. She believed the meek shall inherit the earth, and therefore you wanted meek people around. And she didn't, it's true. If you read about her, Christopher Hitchens wrote a brilliant book on Mother Teresa. And I mean, the whole philosophy there is poor people are virtuous by the very nature of the fact that they're poor. So you want to have lots of poor people. So you don't want to encourage them to learn, to work hard, to rise up into middle classhood, because then they become less virtuous. What you want is them to stay poor. So she would help them not die, but she wouldn't help them go above that. But that she's considered a moral hero. Now, why is she considered a moral hero and Bill Gates not? What did she get out of it? I mean, again, nothing. Or indeed, a perception is that she suffered, right? And if you read Hitchens' book again, or if you read Mother Teresa's diaries, she actually did. She hated what she was doing. She continuously believed that God had left her and that she wasn't sure that there was a God. I mean, she was a miserable human being, it turns out. But that suffering gives her nobility. It gives her actions nobility in our common perception. Bill Gates, what did he get out of it? $70 billion. Right? So how can that be moral? So morality in the culture we live in is not about what somebody does for other people. It's about what? Whether you get anything out of it or not. Whether you get anything out of it or not. And if you get a lot out of it, and the perception at least is that other people are not much better off, then then you're negative. Now, why is this true of, what's the difference between Bill Gates and an athlete then? Because an athlete gets $100 million, and we're fine with it. But Bill Gates get $100 million, and what's the difference?
They use others' skills and attributes. And
Different skills, but why can we associate more with athletic skills?
No,
than we
resource.
can?
They use
Oh,
other
different.
resource.
Other people, yes. So one is using other people in order to attain a goal, and one, it's his individual skill. You can see it. And I think the fundamental difference there is that one is perceptual. When an athlete is great, you can see it. Right? Because it's you and him. And you can see him, and you've shot a basketball, right? Everybody shot a basketball. We know how pathetic we are. And then we see Michael Jordan do it. Oh, who's the guy today? I've been told not to use Michael Jordan anymore. LeBron. Because young people don't know who Michael Jordan is. LeBron James does it. You know, oh, wow, I can't do that. And that's fun to watch, right? So you get a certain sense. Somebody else paid him $100 million. That's fine. I'm getting to enjoy this, right? This is fun. Bill Gates, how many of you have managed a large corporation? How many of you have managed a small one? Very few of you, right? I mean, the skill set, what it takes to do is not something within most of our experience. We have no knowledge of what it takes to be a businessman, what it takes to create, what it takes to build wealth. And we also are somewhat removed from the benefit. And we're not taught the benefit that they get. Indeed, I think we're taught often the opposite. So when you buy a Microsoft product, are you better off for having bought it? I mean, if you pay $100 for, I don't know, something, Windows, right? How much is it worth to you?
$100.
No.
How
How much is it worth to you? If you paid $100, how much is it worth to you?
More.
More than $100. If it was worth $100, you wouldn't bother. Right? You would be indifferent between the money in your pocket and the product over there. The reason you buy it is because it's worth more than $100 to you. You think, you might be wrong, but you go into the transaction assuming that the utility you get from the product is greater than $100. And how much is the product worth to Microsoft? Less than $100. They've made something off of it, right? So both parties have won. The nature of a trade, the nature of a voluntary trade is win-win. But most people don't think of it that way. Most people don't think of, wow, my life is so much better off because of Microsoft. We don't. Nobody talks about it. Nobody thinks in those terms. And indeed, perceptually, you know, most people, if they don't really think about it, the fact that Bill Gates has $70 billion, what does that mean about me? I have 70 billion less. Or we have 70 billion less. So unless you understand the win-win nature of trade, unless you understand that we're both better off after the transaction, then unless you understand that, then his wealth is perceived by me to be at my expense, or at our expense, at somebody's expense. And of course, our teachers teach that this is the whole exploitation Marxist theory of how the world works, which is still in sneaky different ways in our curriculum and in our media and in the way people relate ideas about business to all of us. So the athlete, we see the benefit to us and we accept it. And most of us watch it on television, so we never pay for it. We pay for it in the marketing costs and the goods and in the products, and I mean, we pay for it, but it's so small we don't feel like we pay for it. Right. Versus the businessman, the skill set is a skill set that's foreign to us. We don't understand it, we don't know it. I mean, anybody could do that job. I was on, I'm going to take this off, it's hot in here. It's Austin. I was on Bill O'Reilly's show in 2002. If you remember all the scandals around Enron and WorldCom, all those stuff. And Bill O'Reilly, he's a populist. He's a typical put your finger out into the wind and test where the mood of the country is. Bill O'Reilly wanted to fire every CEO in America that day. Every CEO had to be fired, and I was there to defend CEOs. And his attitude was, anybody could do their job. What do they do? What's a big deal? And there's a certain element that people sympathize with that. they don't understand what a CEO does. They don't understand what it takes to be a CEO, the complexity, the skill set, the need, right? And therefore, $100 million or $70 billion in the case of Bill Gates, how can that ever be justified? Where's the value at? What do I get from it? I don't see it, I don't understand it, and it all looks like a zero-sum world. And I'd be told that if somebody's making a lot of money, it's at my expense, and here it's obvious because I'm not getting any benefit, or at least I can't see it. People, in order to gain an appreciation for the CEO, step one has to be, they have to be conceptual. They have to think, which is a challenge. Everybody thinks. And they have to think about it right. They have to understand the nature of both business, and it's our job as students of business, people who are out there as business leaders, which I think they don't do. Businessmen never go out and explain what it is that they do and defend themselves. The nature of the business and the value that is actually being created. The value that's actually being created. Through win-win transactions, business is what builds the world around us. None of the stuff that we have in our modern society today would exist without profit-seeking businesses. None of it. And yet are businessmen proud of this? Proud of their achievements? Well, I attended a awards dinner, or awards lunch in Charleston, South Carolina. She can't accuse us of being a bunch of liberals, because it was Charleston, South Carolina. And they were giving people lifetime achievement awards, business leaders in the community, lifetime achievement awards. And they read these long biographies as you would expect at such a important event. And of the 10 minutes that they spent on the biographies, they probably spent 1.5 on their business achievements, and 8.5 on their community service and charity. Same Mother Teresa, Bill Gates thing, right? The community service and charity. Yet, even from the perspective of how many people you touch out there, how many people you help, where do you touch more people? In your community service, charity, or in your business? Clearly in your business. Clearly in your business. And yet they're ashamed of it. They're embarrassed by it. Not only don't they go out there and defend themselves, they actually retrench. They actually feel bad about it. They actually feel guilty. When they should feel immense proud of the values they create, of the world that we have. Whether it's the concrete that went into the walls of these, things for the tiles. I was a civil engineer once. In the tiles of the ceiling. All of this, everything. What is this plastic type of floor? The tables, the iPhones. I'm not even getting into all the technology that you guys are playing with while I speak. But all of that is created by businesses, by profit-seeking businesses. And yet, what they're proud of is the few hours they do a week in community or charity or the checks they write up. There's something very, very perverse here. And it's sad in terms of what these guys have actually made, what these guys and gals have actually produced. And yet, they have a certain degree of guilt, of shame in that. Why? So part of it is that people don't understand, that people don't get it, because there's a certain complexity to what it is about business. But what else is it? What else is it about being profitable, being in business, that makes people feel ashamed, that makes people feel guilty? What is business about?
Greed.
Yeah, it's about greed in a sense, right? Let's not. It's about what? It's about profit. Is it only about profit? It's about making money, right? It's about selling stuff and making a profit on that. Is it only about making money? What else is it about?
Ambition. Trade.
It's about ambition.
Pride.
What it?
Pride.
It's about pride. It can be about pride.
Happiness.
Happiness. Why happiness?
Well,
your whole activity is doing, your whole reason to
Yeah,
do is to make
it's
your
a-
life better.
Yeah, it's about being engaged in something that's fulfilling, something fun, something engaging. I mean, Steve Jobs cared about profit when he made these, right? Because they had 60% profit margins. If he cared about meat, he would have sold it a lot cheaper. But it wasn't just about that. I mean, he loved this stuff, right? He loved the vision of it, the beauty of it, the creating something and seeing it in reality out there. But all of it was about whom? It's about Steve Jobs, right? It's about Steve Jobs' profit, Steve Jobs' vision, Steve Jobs' beautiful stuff. It's about Steve Jobs. Business is about the business owners, and hopefully the employees, but the business owners' self-fulfillment. It's about him. It's about self. It's about self-interest. But I like to tell the joke, some of you might have heard it, that when I went to buy this 2008 economy spiraling out of control, and I went to buy my first iPhone because I wanted to stimulate the US economy. Because I know that you guys go to the mall. Why do you go to the mall? To make sure people have jobs. You're all good Keynesians, and you believe that consumption drives the economy, so you go and consume because you want to live in a prosperous country, right? Anybody? Just need one. No, you go to the mall, why? To pursue your self-interest. But what do we know about self-interest?
Very bad.
It's bad. Well, right? Mother Teresa wasn't self-interested. At least that's not what we're told. And her diaries seem to suggest that that was true, right? Self-interest is not morally good. It's not morally noble. It's not morally right. It's actually the opposite. Every one of our philosophers, every one of our religious leaders will tell us that the purpose of morality is sacrifice. It's doing for others. It's being selfless, right? Selflessness is the essence of the good, of the moral, of the noble. Selflessness. I mean, my mother taught me, good Jewish household, think of yourself last. Think of others first. Now, she didn't mean it. Nobody actually means this stuff. Not for your own kids. But that's what we be taught to say. That's what we believe morality is about. Even though we don't live it. Now what happens when you believe something to be good, to be noble, to be right, to be just, but you live differently? What does that create?
Guilt.
Guilt. It's exactly what guilt is all about. Right? We're taught. My mother taught me, be selfless, think of yourself last, think of others first, but then I think of myself first. Wait a second, but my mother taught me that that was good, but I don't want to do that. So I'll write a check. Right? It's called giving back. I mean, and they get their, some load goes up. You know, their mother's a little happier now, right? They feel like it. But they know that doesn't matter. And you see this all over the place. You don't just see it in literally they're writing a check. You see it in the community service and the charity, which they feel obliged to do. And I'm not against community service. I'm not against charity. I'm not against writing a check. But it's the motivation. Note the motivation. The motivation is to appease a form of guilt that I'll get to in a minute. I don't think it's earned. Right? It's unearned guilt. So they do all this stuff to reduce the burden, and of course you can never do enough. Because the fact is we all still live our lives on a day-to-day basis pursuing stuff for us, perceivably self-interested. And yet we live in this quandary. We live in this world of guilt. And you see it. You see when you talk to businessmen. You see how they vote. I mean, guilt is just ask any Catholic or Jewish mother. Guilt is a terrific means to control people. Because you can get them to do stuff that they wouldn't otherwise do. It's not in their self-interest. So, rich people, how do rich people vote, right? Everybody thinks that people vote based on their pocketbook. People vote will be good for them economically, right? So, if I promise to raise your taxes, you won't vote for me, right? That's the typical theory of voting out there. And yet, it's completely untrue. So Obama ran this campaign promising to increase taxes on the rich. And there was every reason to believe his promise. He would increase taxes on the rich. So how do you think the rich voted? What do you want?
Against Obama.
Against Obama, right? You would think. 8 of the 10 richest counties in the United States voted for Obama. For Obama. And you can't just say it's cronyism. Because Silicon Valley is not crony, right? Maybe the counties around DC. But no, right? This isn't cronyism. They voted because it's guilt. Yeah, I'm not giving enough. I haven't given back enough. So you raise my taxes, I give more. In California, we just raised taxes on rich people. Anybody owning more than $250,000, which in California is not that rich, raised it by 30%, from 10% to 13%. Big tax increase. How did the rich vote? For it. Or for what people? For it. People don't vote their pocketbook. People vote what they think is right. And they think it's right for them to be taxed more because they feel guilty about what the money they've made. So the whole moral code of the society in which we live is built around the idea that self-interest is negative. Because what does self-interest entail? What are we taught from when this big that self-interest entails? When you call the kid in the playground, oh, you're selfish, what did you mean? He takes care of himself, which is what selfish literally means. No, what did you mean? That he's what?
He won't share. Not that.
He won't share, but it's worse than that. Not only won't he share, he's going to take your toys if he wants to, right? The whole perception of selfish is that you'll exploit others, you'll take advantage of others, you'll steal, lie, cheat, you'll do whatever it takes to get away with stuff, right? You'll get your way no matter how. So we're presented in ethics, we're presented with 2 versions of ethics. You can either be Mother Teresa, sacrifice your life for the sake of others and do nothing for your own good, right? Or you're a line-stealing SOB. That's it. There's no other alternative in morality, right? And yet there is. And yet there is. Right? Because being self-interested doesn't require lying, stealing, cheating, and being an SOB. Indeed, I would argue that none of those characteristics are actually in your self-interest. That life doesn't reward any of those activities. It actually penalizes them. And particularly in business. So think about what it takes to build and run a successful business over the long term. Because being self-interested means taking care of yourself. Now, does taking care of myself mean just tomorrow? If I'm dedicating my life to taking care of myself, does that mean just tomorrow? I'm going to live a certain life. 40 years, I've still got maybe. Maybe. 40, right? It doesn't just mean tomorrow, it means every one of these years. There's no point in my doing something tomorrow that 5 years from now is just going to collapse my life. Now, I value tomorrow more than I value 40 years from now. Why is that? It's basic finance, right? Because tomorrow, probability of me being actually alive tomorrow is high. Probability of me being alive in 40 years, lower, right? There's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen 40 years from now. I know about tomorrow, but I still value myself if I'm going to live 40 years. That's why we save, or some people save, used to save, when we weren't incentivized not to. Because I do care about 40 years from now. So somebody self-interested cares about his life, his whole life, not just about tomorrow. So if you're in business, if you're trying to build a business, does it pay to lie? Long term. Does it pay in the moment? Sometimes, in the sense that you might get stuff that you wouldn't otherwise. Does it pay long term?
Not in the cost of your reputation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in business and you're known as a liar, nobody does business with you. Nobody deals with you. If you lie enough, you land up in jail. If you lie to your employees, who's going to want to work for you? People are not going to want to work for you. Liars don't succeed in business. A great example of this is Bernie Madoff. Anybody know who Bernie Madoff is? Pyramid scheme? You never know. Bernie is in jail, right? He was caught. And he's recently been interviewed, and he said he's happier in jail than he was before he was caught. And I believe it. Because Bernie Madoff lied to everybody. his best friends, his family, the people around him. He said he was terrified constantly of being caught, not by the police, by his wife, by his kids. You know who turned him in the end? His kids. His sons. And one of his sons committed suicide a year after he turned him in. I mean, this is devastating, even for somebody as corrupt and horrible like Bernie Madoff. Lying doesn't work if you care about yourself, if you care about your own life long term. Cheating, stealing, none of those strategies in business work. I mean, again, they might work for instant gratification in the moment, but they don't work. No successful businessman in a free market, granted, if it's regulated and controlled, you never know. But in a free market, is successful after a lifetime of lying and stealing and cheating. It's not a strategy for success in business. It's quite the contrary. When somebody's done phenomenally well in business, what can you say about them? What have they been? What's that? Successful, but what can you say about the attributes that led to success? If you look, and you can look at any book, you look at, any of these business success books, they all basically boil down to the same kind of stuff in terms of successful businessmen describing what led them to be successful. And I don't know any business book that presents, okay, the way to make money is to be a lying, cheating thief, or the way to make money is to be an SOB. Nobody writes that because it's not true. The guys who are actually successful are not any of them. They're being self-interested, but self-interest requires them to do what? What are some of the characteristics of a successful businessman?
They solve a problem.
Yeah, be problem solver, right? Be rational. And be rational means deal with facts, deal with reality. Don't deal with lies. Lies distort. This is an important tool. This is a crucial tool for your survival in business and in life. This is what it's all about. Your ability to reason, your ability to think. Lies is a corrupting mechanism for this. There's a saying in computers, garbage in, garbage out. Well, it's the same in here. You put in garbage in here, you'll get garbage. In business, you put in bad facts, you'll be a lousy business person. In life, generally, this is true. How many of you, well, I shouldn't ask this, but how many of you have lied? I mean, even in your personal life, it's a lousy strategy. You often get caught. If you don't get caught, you have to lie many times. It complicates relationships. It complicates your life. It's hard work. Reality is so much easier. And at my age, I can barely remember what happened last week. What actually happened. This is true. Right? Now, if I lie about it, I have to remember two things. The fact and the lie. But actually, it's more than two things. Because I have to remember the fact, the lie, and who I told the fact to, who I told the lie to. But it's more than that even, because I have to remember why I told them the lie. It's way too much work for me. It's so much easier just to tell the truth, because then you have to remember only one thing. The truth. And if you forget you told somebody that, it's not a problem, because the only thing you tell people is the one thing that actually happened. So it's easy. So that, am I lying to this person this week or not? That's how. And that's true, again, business, life, it's all the same. The same basic principles. So they had to be problem solvers. They had to use their mind. They had to be rational. What else would come out of these books in terms of business success?
Disciplined and persistent.
Yeah, they had to be hardworking, disciplined, productive. They had to be, had a focus, incredibly focused on the end result. And, these people work incredibly hard. If you read about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or any of these successful businessmen in any industry, they don't reach that top unless they're incredibly hardworking and productive. They're focused, single-mindedly focused on being successful in this. And they love it. They love it. If you meet a successful businessman, they almost always love what it is that they're doing. They enjoy it, unless they're riddled with guilt about it.
They have integrity.
Yeah, they have integrity. They do what they say they're going to do. Right? They live up to their own standards that they've set. They live, and that's important for their employees, it's important for their suppliers, it's important for their customers. What else? They're rational, they're productive, they have integrity. Yeah, they're long-range thinkers, which is related to being rational, right? They think long-range. They're not just in the moment. They're not just about getting away with stuff. And the ones who are about getting away with stuff are the ones who commit the fraud, who have problems, who go to jail. If you go back to WorldCom and some of those, a lot of what happened where it was not that, and this is true of most business fraud, it's not that they sat down one day and said, how can I cheat my shareholders and customers out of millions of dollars and line my pockets? WorldCom is a good example. It's not what happened. What happened was they had earnings below market expectations. They said, I don't feel like reporting the lower, and next quarter will be much better. I'll just this time, one time, it wasn't even going into their pockets. I'll just, fake the number this one time. And of course the next month, it's down, but it's even worse. And now they have to fake a lot more. And soon, you're faking billions and billions of dollars. Or the guy in Singapore who, brought down Barings Bank, right? The same thing. He made an investment in the Nikkei, and it went south, and he lost $100 million, and instead of reporting that he'd lost $100 million, and they would have been pissed off at him, they would have given him a little slap on the wrist. Instead of that, he felt really bad, so he doubled up. He said, it doesn't go down 2 days in a row. And of course it did. He lost again and doubled up. And soon enough, I think it was $2 or $3 billion that he lost. And he landed up in jail in Singapore. Not a pleasant thing. I'm pretty sure. Jail in Singapore, not good. What's that?
Canings.
Yeah, canings. That's, I think, yeah. Canings for chewing gum. Imagine what they do for losing $3 billion. So, you want to be a long-term thinker because short-term thinking gets you in trouble. It'll get you in trouble. And just think of the technology world right now. Think about what happens if you don't think long-term in the technology world we live in today when things are changing so quickly. And if you latch on just on the short-term thing and you forget the long-term, you're likely to lose in the technology game today anyway, even if you're really, really good. But to really be successful, you have to have a vision. You have to know where you're going. Steve Jobs was working on projects years and years into the future. He had a vision for the product line. It wasn't just something tomorrow. Samsung, on the other hand, seems to respond to anything Apple does, right? So it's more of a responsive thing. But they've, of course, been incredibly successful. They do it very, very well when they do it. They know who to copy. That's a skill set as well. Not everybody knows that. There's still a company out there trying to copy BlackBerry. So you have to be rational. You have to have integrity. You have to be productive. You have to be honest. We talked about honesty. Anything else?
You just mentioned it actually. They have to believe very strongly in what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to have a passion about it. You have to love what you do. You have to love what you do. And you have to be doing it for whom? You have to be doing it for yourself. That's, business is about self-interest. And I don't know businessmen who go out there and, I want to maximize social utility. So I'm going to get into, there's no, nobody gets motivated. They might have the illusion that they're doing it that way, but they want to do it because they love it, because it makes them feel good. It has to be internal. It has to come from them. So it has to be self-motivated, be selfish in a really deep sense, to be incredibly successful. Again, because they work incredibly hard. This is not easy stuff. This is not fun and games. If you read Steve Jobs' biography, you know this, right? These were difficult decisions to make, difficult challenges, failure, often failure, learn from that failure, rise up to the challenge. This is hard work, so you better love what you're doing. How do you treat employees? Be a good business, all your customers, all your suppliers. How would you treat employees? When I used to teach, I used to do this little exercise with my students. And we used to, there's this idea of stakeholder capitalism. Where you're the CEO, you really care about all the stakeholders equally. You're not maximizing shareholder wealth. You care about all stakeholders. So I used to make a list of all the stakeholders. Right? And there are a lot of them. You can imagine lots of them. And then you have a decision, a corporate decision. You move a plant to Mexico or not to move. Okay, is it good for the stakeholder, not good for the stakeholder? Put a plus or minus next to one of them and go, da-da-da-da-da. And you get a board with lots of pluses and lots of minuses. Okay, make a decision. And what does that boil down to? How do you make a decision at the end of the day if you're trying to do that? It's called politics. Whoever's got the biggest voice, who's ever got the biggest stake, he's the one who's going to get his way. On the other hand, companies only maximize shareholder wealth. So all they care about is shareholders. They don't care about anybody else. So when it comes to, then we go over the stakeholders. So for example, when it comes to the employees, they chain them to the machines and they whip them 3 times a day. Because they don't care about the employees. All they care about is shareholders. And the students go, oh, wait a minute. We do care about the employees. They produce the stuff. We want them to be productive. So we have to treat them well. Why? Because we want to maximize shareholder wealth. Right? But we need to treat employees well. We need to treat our customers well. So how do we treat them? What's another word for well in this context? Justly. You need to treat them with justice. Right? You need to treat them based on what they deserve, which means what?
What the work for.
Yeah, how much, what they work for, how much they work to us. How productive they are. What's their value to the enterprise. And that's true of our employees, but that's true of our suppliers. Our customers, you want to be guided by a justice, by a sense of what's just, what's right. You're not there to exploit, because we talked about these are all hopefully win-win relationships. You want them to produce. This is a cooperative activity business. So you treat them with justice based on what they deserve. So again, the mythology of business, right? Short-term, particularly American business, are considered short-term. It's always weird to me that we're the only country that invests in biotech, and yet we're short-term. Biotech's like a 15-year investment horizon, right, to see any returns. More R&D in this country than anywhere else in the world. We're short-term, we exploit, we treat people badly, all of this stuff, and yet that's not what business is actually about. Right? It's being rational, which means being long-term, it's being just, it's being honest, it's having integrity, it's caring with a passion about what the product you do and what you care for. And lastly, I'll just mention, it's about being proud. This is the caring, right? It's being proud about what you want to do, about wanting to be really good at it, by wanting to attain excellence, by striving to be the best that you can be. You know, successful businessmen, that's what it's about. So, if you think about business, the picture that is painted in the culture about business is so distorted and perverted. And this is why we have this negative attitude towards them. It's why we treat them so badly, you know, a PR perspective. You know, over half the murders on TV and in movies are committed by businessmen. Over half. You know how many murders in real life are committed by businessmen? Very few. Who commits most of the murders in real life? Politicians. Well, yes, in the big city.